Imagine walking into an empty room and walking out carrying hundreds of tiny invisible chains attached to your body, each one connected to something you bought: a car, a phone, a piece of clothing, even that decorative object you barely notice. You can't see them, but you can feel them. The weight, the restlessness, the constant distraction. What once seemed like a material achievement gradually reveals itself as a silent contract. With each new acquisition, a small piece of your soul is pawned, traded for responsibility, surveillance, and upkeep. Is it really yours? Or are you the one being owned? We live in a society that teaches us, from an early age, to measure success by accumulation. To have is to win. To buy is to progress. And to own is somehow to exist with more relevance. But there is a hidden cost behind this logic, a price that doesn't appear on the tag and that few notice until it's too late. This cost isn't financial, but mental, emotional, energetic. Every object you add to your life demands something in return: time, attention, space, care. And this, slowly, begins to consume the quiet parts of your peace. Think about a simple purchase, a new phone, for example. It comes with the promise of efficiency, connection, modernity. But along with it comes the constant obligation to keep it updated, protected, charged, functional. There's the anxiety over notifications, the impulse to check, the comparison with newer models. And, almost imperceptibly, a device that was supposed to serve you becomes a small tyrant. What was meant to simplify starts dictating rhythms, occupying thoughts, stealing presence. We expand this phenomenon to all areas of life. The house that needs renovations, the car that demands regular maintenance, the clothes that fill the closet and the mind with daily decisions, the furniture that needs cleaning, the electronics that require updates. Everything we own, no matter how harmless it seems, requires some form of ongoing attention. And the more we accumulate, the more fragmented we become, divided by invisible commitments to things that aren't alive, yet consume us. This is where the problem lies. We confuse freedom with ownership. We believe that by having more, we are more autonomous. But the opposite is true. Every new item establishes a new line of responsibility. A subtle web forms, tying up our free time, draining our quiet moments, creating obligations where there once was space. And ironically, the more we have, the less space we have left to be. So the issue is not owning things. It's not realizing what each possession demands. We live surrounded by objects, and yet we fail to notice how deeply they shape our behavior, our choices, our moods. There is a hidden cost in modern consumption, the silent rent each item charges from our attention and from our soul. And it's this cost we need to start talking about. There is a deeply rooted illusion in our culture, the belief that owning something gives us control. But in reality, every possession is a silent negotiation with freedom. Jean-Jacques Rousseau once said, "Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains." And perhaps today, those chains take the form of contracts, payment plans, overflowing shelves, and endless notifications. As we accumulate goods, we believe we are building a fortress of security around us. Yet, more often than not, we are simply building internal walls, where maintaining what we have begins to consume the time that once belonged to simply being. At its core, every object is like a small energetic signature. By accepting it, we become partially responsible for its existence. That wouldn't be a problem if our energy were infinite. But it isn't. And that's where accumulation turns into imprisonment. We become guardians of what we own, caretakers of things. And the more we have, the more pieces of ourselves are required to keep that structure standing. The soul, once light and curious, begins to transform into a manager of worries, a slave to an ever-growing inventory. This logic robs us of something essential: inner silence. When our possessions take up too much, the internal space to reflect, to feel, and to simply exist begins to shrink. The philosophy of minimalism, so often misunderstood, isn't about living with less out of restriction, but about reclaiming the wholeness of being, freeing ourselves from excess so we can hear ourselves again. When everything around you demands attention, the question that remains is, how much of your life is still yours? And how much have you already mortgaged in the name of possession? Think about the last time you cleaned your house. How much time was spent organizing things you barely use? How many times have you bought something that seemed essential at first, but now just takes up space and demands care? The shelf that needs dusting, the appliances that require maintenance, the gifts kept out of obligation. All of these steal minutes from your day, fragment your attention, and demand a subtle energy. Not immediately noticeable, but cumulative over time. And so, day after day, these small obligations shape your routine, influence your decisions, and even define what you call free time. Even in the smallest things, the soul's rent reveals itself. You buy an expensive watch, and along with it comes the fear of losing it, the worry over scratches, the urge to show it off. You get a new car and start living around the insurance, the maintenance, the obsessive care over every little dent in the paint. And the most ironic part, these objects, which were supposed to serve your freedom, become the very centers around which your life begins to orbit. It's not that they're bad in themselves, but when we allow them to dictate the rhythm and focus of our days, we drift away from something essential. The lightness of simply existing without constantly owing something to everything we own. Everything you own, in some way, also owns you. The true cost of a life built on accumulation isn't the money that leaves your account, but the serenity that silently slips away day after day. Every object demands something. Your attention, your energy, your time. Elements that should be invested in experiences, relationships, and in yourself. Maybe the freedom we're all searching for doesn't lie in having more, but in needing less. And by recognizing that, we begin to reclaim parts of our soul that were slowly rented out along the way. If this reflection resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Here, we keep exploring the value of things, and more importantly, the value of living with awareness.